Thank you for joining the Ella Project today for our latest webinar, this one focusing on artist-led organizations. Well, I can do that. We're very excited to be presenting this. This is the first in a series of 4 of these conversations on different topics that we'll be doing over the next 2 months or so. We'll have June 1st, conversation on international touring with Cole Williams and Ron Rona. Similar nonprofit conversation. This is kind of like starting an idea. The next one is going to be kind of the midlife crisis of an idea, about once you move forward with an organization, decided that that's not all that you have left necessarily, though. And that's going to be a very interesting conversation with Trey McIntyre and Molly Quinlan Hayes. And then we're going to wrap up on June 28th. With having an artist-led gallery discussion with 2 visual artists who've also taken the gallery plunge into being in business and having a storefront as well, with Andrew Pollock of Pollock Glass and Patrick Galupe of Arts Kinetic. We're very excited to have you guys here. Just to remind everyone, outside of these workshops, Ella Project is your home for pro bono legal assistance for arts and culture here in New Orleans. If you have any specific legal issues, please reach out to us at ellanola.org. We can take care of copyrights, contract review, nonprofit incorporation. Several people on this call are people that have done nonprofit incorporation with us, and we're happy to see them doing well. Before I bring in our presenter today, Bethany Paulsen, and our fantastic panel of Claire Thriffiley and Gian Smith, I want to bring in Heather Pontonio from the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation, a longtime friend of the Ella Project and a supporter of this series, to talk about what they have coming up and some other things like mine. Heather, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Jean, thanks for allowing me to be with you all today. I'm super excited to hear these amazing folks and all the work that they've experienced and have to share with everyone. As Jean said, I'm Heather Pontonio with the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation. We're based up in Connecticut, but we do funding all across the country. And our focus in that funding is professional development for artists with webinars like this, so all across the country. We also serve as the backbone for the Artist Thrive initiative. And I'm hitting enter on the chat right now, so you'll get all the links related to that. So that'll send you to the site. And we encourage you on your own time to take a look at it, explore it, use the site, take the survey, use the resources, listen to stories. It's all free. It's all there available for you to figure out what you need to do to improve your work and your career so that you can thrive. There's 2 tools, one for artists and one for organizations. So whatever hat you're bringing into this, there's something for you on the site. And just like every initiative in the country, you have to have an annual summit in order to gather people together around that. So our annual summit is in July 18 to 21. It'll be in person in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, but it's also available online for a full hybrid experience. A bunch of folks that are with us here today are with us because the opportunity to join for this was one of the pre-summit registered attendees opportunities to continue to learn before we get to that July time together. So if you're interested in learning more about the summit, I included the actual summit link to that unique site, but we encourage you to dig in and explore even more. So thank you for inviting me today, and I look forward to hearing what's next.
Thank you so much, Heather. And yeah, I will put in my own endorsement for the great work you guys have done on the site and with the assessment tools and the amazing amount of information that you put out in your email newsletter. I definitely encourage everyone to sign up. I've gotten a lot of good tips, and I know you will as well. Thanks again to everybody. And I want to bring in my friend and partner here at the Ella Project, Bethany Paulsen, who's going to lead us through today's discussion. Welcome, Bethany.
Thank you. I am very excited to be here, as you know, we've all kind of shared here, but to be in a room with so many creative people who have ideas, and as we know that you've put them out there as artists in different ways. But we're going to talk a little bit today about taking that creativity and turning it into something else. That you have an idea that you might be able to share with the community to provide a new service or new opportunities that are out there. And so we're going to do that from the perspective of 2 great people who have already done so and are willing to share their stories and what they've done with us. I'll do quick introductions here of Gian Smith, who's an award-winning filmmaker, poet, and change maker who has created and launched the Black Film Festival of New Orleans, and Claire Thriffiley, owner of Claire Elizabeth Gallery and founder and director of Amy's Art Cart, which is a volunteer arts program at Children's Hospital in New Orleans that brings a little bit of color to patients' lives. So I thought maybe we'd just get started with Gian, if you could get us started by telling us a little bit about your work as an artist and what led you to starting the film festival.
Yes, and first of all, thank you, Bethany. That's the first time I've been called a change maker. I like that. You can put that in the bio. So the festival came about as a way for me to give something to the community that I need to draw from and I saw wasn't there. I started my career as an artist right after Katrina. It was a lot more focused around poetry and spoken word. Shortly after that, I started doing a little bit of organizing. A friend of mine had an opportunity and reached out to me and some other friends. So the four of us started a spoken word, music, and visual art based open mic. That was in 2008. It's still currently going. We're actually, we've agreed to do a couple of shows with the John Scott Center at the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. So we're still currently programming, and it's been going well since. And then at one of those shows, we decided to have some film screenings. That was my idea. I just started to change media into film, and I invited some filmmakers that I had relationships with. I invited, I think it was 5 films that we screened, including one of mine. And that day when we screened them, I was talking to each of the filmmakers at the event, and nobody knew anybody else, which was amazing to me, because like in New Orleans, it's a small city and everybody knows everybody anyway. But then 5 Black filmmakers all in the same room having not met. It's like, how are we in the same industry and in the same tiny little city and nobody is working together? Nobody's networking. Nobody knows who the other person is in an industry that really requires all hands on deck. That was my first cue at what the community was lacking. About that time, that screening I did was for a film that I made that I was in the process of traveling with through film festivals. And in my travels, I was very underwhelmed at some of the film festivals that I was invited to and went to screen my film to a new audience. Whether it was because the environment was not really conducive for great film screenings, or because the administrative people who, you know, should have had hospitality at the forefront and should have had care for the filmmakers as one of their tenants, they seem to be disconnected. And again, I do want to stress that this is not all film festivals, not by a long shot. There were some really good opportunities in there, but definitely the majority of them, there was just a lot to be desired. And as a person who is an independent filmmaker, is operating with my own resources most of the time, and am pouring directly from my own self into these films, I think it's not too much to ask that the films be cared for by those stewards. But I wasn't really seeing that. And so to me, that really rang as an opportunity to be better and to set a better standard. And, you know, whether or not the other film festivals would pick up on that and follow that, not really my business. All I can do is provide the best platform I can, which since 2018 has been the goal, to give Black filmmakers from around the country and in some other spots beyond in the diaspora a space for their film to be celebrated, for the audience to be expanded, and for them to be able to grow their network and just be able to just enjoy being a filmmaker in a meaningful way that makes all the work that we do on the front end a little bit easier. So between that and just trying to be a representative of the independent film community for our people here that maybe need an anchor point. All those things really became essential to me, and so that's where BFF&O has its roots.
That's great. And I want to dive into the process of how you got to making the festival, but let's let Claire tell a little bit about the organization that she founded and where that need came from. And then we'll compare the processes that you went through in order to do that.
Sure. So thank you everyone for having me. I moved home to Louisiana in 2013 from New York. I had actually been participating in a program in New York called Free Arts, where we would have a Saturday where we would have a rotation of 5 art projects, and they would bring in children from all over the community, but particularly Children's Aid Society and homeless services. And every Free Arts Day was funded by a corporation or a business in New York. And I just really thought this program was incredible. My last year in New York, I really got very involved with it. And when I decided to move home to New Orleans, I was looking for a way to give back to the community, and particularly to use my love of arts and working with children and sharing creativity in a really meaningful way. A physician actually that I was working with, let me know about Children's Hospital. And she said, Claire, I bet you could volunteer at Children's. They always have such great, creative programs and outreach for children. So in 2013, in the fall, I started volunteering at Children's Hospital. And to be fair, the wheels of what is now Amy's Art Cart were really already in motion. Like, they had the basis of the program. Christopher Shaw and Lee Myers, who are the head of volunteer services now, really, they developed kind of this program where volunteers would bring art and activities from room to room. But I realized that really nobody was talking about this amazing program they had, and more importantly, nobody was fundraising for it. So I had a particular patient who I got really close with, her and her mother. And that first year, I really wanted to kind of raise money for this particular program that she had been using. She was a brain cancer patient, and I just noticed like she had a lot of limit in what art and activity projects that she could do. So I said, you know what, I'm going to fundraise. I'm going to get us a new cart, design it, make it really special. And I'm going to name it Amy's Art Cart. So I named it Amy's Art Cart after my cousin, Amy Palmer, who is a very talented artist and art teacher. When I was growing up, Amy would teach at creative art camps throughout the city, Country Day Art Camp, one at Tulane University. And at a very young age, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She was about 22 years old. And I suppose creatively, my mom and my aunt, when she would go and teach those first few years she was diagnosed with MS, I would go and be her little studio assistant, her little art assistant, just help her with whatever, she needed. And I wanted to kind of honor her memory. So she passed away also in 2012, right before I moved home to New Orleans. And what we found with Amy, she had a very progressive case of MS. Was that continuing to create with her nurses and with her caretakers. My aunt was very smart in that she actually hired a number of artists and musicians to be caretakers for my cousin, knowing that her creative mind was still there, even if she had mobility issues. So I named it Amy's Art Cart in her spirit. Actual design of the cart references the last art project that Amy and I did together before she passed away, which was where we dyed butterflies in colored dye. They were white silk butterflies. And I sat next to her bed and she said, Claire, dip this color. She could still tell me, she still had that eye where she could say, okay, we're going to combine these colors or dip it this much. And so I wanted to bring that spirit to Children's Hospital, name it Amy's Art Cart in her memory. And so that perseverance and that creative outlet could be something that we shared with, all the patients at Children's. So Children's has always been very supportive. Bethany and I discussed this. So I am a fund under the larger umbrella of Children's Hospital nonprofit status. I fundraise actually throughout the year. And I also partner with, religious groups or business groups, medical groups that are in town in New Orleans, or maybe come in town for seminars and meetings. A lot of them just reach out to me and as part of their corporate social responsibility, or perhaps, for example, Toro Synagogue did a big fundraiser where they collected like small board books that we actually have a tiny little library on the art cart. Since when you're young, under one, creativity is really reading and seeing color and pattern and picture. And so I will work with groups to collect physical donations. And then, people really reach out pretty much all throughout the year if they're interested in doing any sort of fundraiser, or getting a group of friends together and fundraising and saying my goal is to raise $2,000 or whatever the case may be. So we have that throughout the year. And so I've been doing Amy's Art Cart 8 years now, and we've raised probably in monetary and in-kind donations over $100,000. As you can imagine, a hospital the size of Children's that has significantly grown over those 8 years. We use a lot of art supplies.
That's
so
great.
yeah.
It sounds like you've been able to touch a lot of lives with that and take something that was so important to you and to your aunt, and to be able to share it with so many people. And I'm sure there's a number of people on the call here who have these ideas, who want to be able to share them in some way. And so let's talk about like the technical pieces of that, and where we got started. And I'll go back to Gian first about you becoming a 501c3 and deciding that was right for the organization and how to take it forward. So can you talk us a little bit through your thought process of why you decided to establish that way and the how of it?
Yes. So I went that route, first of all, because I don't actually get any revenue from the festival. It's free to the public. All the events are free. And that's how I've always wanted it to be. Ideally, I'm going to have as many eyes on these films as possible. Going to give the best opportunity for these films to be seen and to be accessible to the community. So ultimately, the goals really for the festival aren't about generating income. They're about building the community here and at large for independent filmmakers, which, it's not a truly benevolent goal. It does serve me as an independent filmmaker who needs a stronger community here to draw from and needs a bigger representation outside of here to access. But I have some fairly good grant writing skills, in my opinion. They're okay, they're pretty good. And I have some really good friends and some good relationships. And so I knew that for me, grant writing and sponsorships is where I was going to draw most of my resources from. So it really made sense to just go all in with making this completely non-profitable entity that I could still be able to sustain in other ways. And so thank you, especially to the Ella Project for stepping in and helping out. Could not have done it without you guys. Would not have also.
And that's a good point. I think one of the pieces that going the 501c3 route can be a really good option for a number of people who have an idea for an organization to serve the community in some way. But there are some challenges that come with that. And so having some help, whether it's from the Ella Project or another organization that can help you navigate through the pieces that you have to do to maintain compliance, to get set up is an important piece of it. And Claire, you went a different direction that you touched on this a little bit. You didn't start your organization from scratch, but the situation that you're in gives you some flexibility with what you're doing, but you also have some other pieces you don't have to think about as much. Can you explain that?
Yes, absolutely. So there was a time where I thought, maybe I should separate this and make it a 501c3 and, have a board and do all of that. For me, it just, when I looked at it and I talked about it with my lawyer, who is conveniently my brother, he just made me realize that like you said, there is so much that goes into having a 501c3 and the sponsorships and the grants and all of that. And for me, it just made sense to really lean upon the operational and administrative support for Children's Hospital, because they already had a huge development office. They already have a marketing department. I am able to do what I am really passionate about, which is like getting the word out about this program and finding donors just through the community, or working with groups that come into this beautiful city of New Orleans and want to give back in a meaningful way. So for me, it made sense. I also, as Bethany mentioned, I own my own small business. So, there's a lot that goes into that. And it just made sense for me to lean upon this larger organization that has been around, for over 60 years and make my own thing. So I can, pick out the art supplies, and I can correspond with people in the community. I can organize the donation drives, whether it's monetary or in-kind donations. And then really behind the scenes, there is a team that I work with at Children's Hospital that helps me in so many ways. Even if it's, okay, Claire, this is your monthly donation report. This is who donated to your fund. And then I know, I'm going to write them a handwritten thank you note to say thank you. Or just, I actually am kind of unique. This is not always the case, but my nonprofit side of Amy's Art Cart, I am also volunteering at Children's. I go once a week, every Monday night. That is my time. And then the other times the cart is pushed around by, university students, volunteers from the community. But it allows me to go in once a week. I know what art supplies we need. I know what my patients are responding to. It also allows me to see maybe unique needs that I hadn't thought about. For example, I have ordered a number of things for patients that are perhaps autistic, and they don't always respond to the same traditional, crayons and coloring books. So having that hands-on and having the operational support of Children's Hospital, it just really made sense for me and for my lifestyle.
So you both mentioned the piece about, not making a profit on this, you're not taking a salary. And sometimes when you're running a nonprofit, you can be, it's not that you can't take a salary if it's a nonprofit organization, anything like that. But when it is your organization, the fundraising falls on you and figuring it out. Can you speak a little bit to some of the challenges associated with that, if there have been any? Maybe there haven't. And where did you start when you decided you were doing this organization, you had to fund it?
Yeah, the challenges for sure with fundraising are that, with grants, some of them the cycle in which you have to apply may be very clear, but the cycle that they pay out may not. And so, sometimes it does not necessarily align with my programming, which the show must go on. And so then, got to figure that part out. And so, that's definitely been a factor that I've had to adjust to a little bit. Also, some of the other obstacles with this, I don't know that I frame them as necessarily being obstacles of a nonprofit specifically, but just running an institution in a city like New Orleans, where there's so many other things that are always going on. It is based on getting a certain amount of people together in a room at one time, and there's parts like the marketing piece that Claire was speaking to, and on my end, that's often like an outsourced thing, and comes a lot of times with favor and me asking friends, hey, can this be addressed down the line when the money comes in? Which, luckily enough, I do have really good relationships and a lot of favor with people. And so, things get done, but definitely not without a little bit of stress and a little bit of concern about timelines sometimes. So
fundraising, I think, is, something you have to do all the time. I mean, people email me really all the time, whether it's a teacher at a local school and as part of their holiday time, they want to do a donation drive, or as I mentioned earlier, business groups that come in the city, they might just find me through social media or online and reach out and say, hey, we have a conference in town and we want to put together art kits for Amy's Art Cart. So I really do make myself available all 24 hours a day. I mean, and I'm sure Gian can say the same thing. When you start something like this, you have to be so passionate about it that you are willing to do whatever it takes to get whatever you need, whether that be monetary donations, physical donations, a space to host a seminar or workshop, whatever. And part of that is making yourself available. And part of it is also making yourself perhaps a little vulnerable. Like, you do have to ask favors of people. I reach out to people, multiple times a year, just kind of telling them these are the projects we're doing with Amy's Art Cart. If it's, beyond just the art supply component of it. And I make a point every week to share something on social media that's included on the cart, whether it's, a particular coloring book or this Play-Doh or, this paint by number set that I got in, or whatever the case may be, so that my donors are constantly aware of, the items that are going on the cart. They have a physical reminder of what they're donating to. And I actually have donors all over the country. Like, I have one lady in California that donates a little bit every single month. And she will send me messages saying like, oh, I love these, items that y'all have been including on the card, or I love this activity. I used to do this when I was young, so that constant being in people's minds, sharing your story, really. It's just about sharing your story and finding an audience that it's meaningful to them. So I think it helps, like Gian said, he is an independent filmmaker. I do work in the arts. I own an art gallery. So if people come into the gallery and, they just ask me about me, my background, I'm like, the gallery is a portion of who I am, but Amy's Art Cart is also a big part of my life. And so, in that way, some of my clients have also donated to Amy's Art Cart, just from me sharing my story and the program.
I think you both touched on the fact that it takes a lot of time and energy to run these organizations. Can you speak a little bit to, I mean, does it have an effect, positive or negative, on the art or the business that you're doing otherwise? Or do you find ways to tie those pieces together?
Yeah, I think, running your own business, it doesn't matter what it is yourself, whether you are your only employee, whether you have other employees, at the end of the day, if it's your name, it falls on you. So there is a lot of stress in, that portion. And like we both said, neither of us take a salary from this. So it is really, donated time at this point. And, so I just kind of set times for myself. Like, if I'm working, doing my regular work, I might set aside 30 minutes to an hour to write thank you notes or answer emails from donors. I'm constantly in contact with the administrative side of Children's Hospital that helps me with donations, whether they're receiving them and checking them in and make sure all the items we ordered came, or if they said, hey, Claire, someone reached out to us and they want to do a donation drive for Children's Hospital, and we think Amy's art cart would be great. That is just constant communication. But, since it's something I'm so passionate about, having that time where I go to Children's Hospital every week, or, I'm setting aside time to write thank you cards or answer an email. It's time that gives back to me in a really meaningful way. And I think if I ran my own business and I didn't have Amy's art cart, like I would lack that, a little bit of that meaning in my life. Like it gives back to me. It makes me feel like I have a purpose. And that, to me, that compensation in time is really, that it brings a lot of fulfillment in my life. So.
For me, there's definitely a lot of overlap between my own personal artistic expression and the work that I do with the organization. With it being a very film-centric institution, then that gives me as an artist opportunities for my own exhibition. As a self-taught filmmaker who is very much still in the process of learning, it gives me a lot of opportunities to actually get my hands dirty and practice. One of the things that a lot of filmmakers don't have access to is repetition and the opportunity to make mistakes. And, and that's because that's how you learn. And with this film festival, I get to do a lot just by virtue of people seeking me for help. And so I'm involved in a lot of projects. I do a filmmaker development lab where I'm teaching novice filmmakers how to make films. And these are all opportunities for me to practice these skills, this leadership, and to, refine my own art. So, obviously that this is a fairly unique situation. I don't know that every nonprofit could provide the same platform to an artist, but I definitely lean into my strengths. That's something Claire mentioned earlier when she was thinking about putting this together. Like, what can I do? What am I good at that's going to serve this organization? And same, definitely finding ways to lean into my strengths and build what I have already worked towards with the opportunities that are available through the organization.
Great perspective. It sounds like things are going very well with that. But you mentioned earlier, like building the opportunity so that it is more profitable, so that you can take a salary, so that maybe there's room for growth within the organization. Is that something that that is on the horizon? Are you looking towards how to grow already?
Yes, I definitely feel like the education that I'm getting, not just from running my own nonprofit, but I also have a day job working for NOVAC, New Orleans Video Access Center, a nonprofit, and learning under, I've only been there since June of last year, But in that time, just what I've learned from my executive director has been so invaluable. Just amazing wealth of knowledge from India King Robbins, who's my AD, and really just being able to see from the inside, like how nonprofits sustain themselves, how, you know, they go out and make the resources happen. You know, those things have empowered me to not just be better prepared to do them for myself, but to feel confident that I can do those things. And so, yeah, definitely, you know, I feel like there are really great things on the horizon. I raised more money this year in 2023, even though we're in May. I've already raised more money this year than maybe not all of the years combined, but you know, but like a very significant amount. And I don't feel like I got lucky this year. I feel like I'm definitely getting better and seeing the opportunities better, being able to capitalize on what I have, being able to frame what I have in a way that makes it fundable, and in a lot of meaningful ways, being able to draw upon, you know, just what I know nonprofits to do in order to make themselves stand out when it's time for, you know, the rainmakers to drop some money on you. So yeah, definitely for me, I feel like I have a goal set for myself for next year to try to get up to that 6-figure mark, get $100,000 in sponsorship and grants. Definitely feel like it's really attainable based on what I've done so far, where I am. And you know, I don't know, I buy in, so I believe it's gonna work.
Congratulations. That's excellent to hear the fundraising is going so well. I like hearing what you said too about learning from this other organization that's doing similar work. I think sometimes there's like this little bit of people think nonprofits are competing because you're all fundraising for, you know, limited dollars that are out there. But can we talk a little bit about the resources and how we can find help, whether it's through volunteers or other places? Where are you finding help that maybe surprises you or is really supporting your work that you would recommend for somebody who's just getting started to go to as well?
You know, you just really need to think about your network, like, you know, whatever you're involved in, whether it's professionally or outside of your regular day job, like what are you involved in? What are you passionate about? I think if you share your story with people and why the work is meaningful to you, you are going to find people that have similar interests to you. Like I have had many people, like great donors that have sent me emails and said, you know, Claire, when I was young, I volunteered at a children's hospital in Atlanta. And so I know like that, having that creative outlet, having some, you know, something for kids to focus on besides the medical part of why they're in the hospital, like just having that is so meaningful to them. And like, I would never know, you know, this person had this experience, you know, 20, 30 years ago, had I not shared my story. So I think, you know, what we mentioned earlier about fundraising, you know, that it can be difficult and you do have to make yourself vulnerable. You know, in order to enhance your network, you do just have to research people like, oh, you know, maybe there's this person in the community that has this similar interest to me. Maybe I should reach out to them and see if they're interested in getting involved. Like I've reached out to people blindly, just emailed them, having a cup of coffee, send them an email. And then, you know, they're like, I didn't know about this program. This is amazing. I would love to help you. So, you know, I think that anything that you're passionate about, like Gian's obviously very passionate and very great at what he does. And that is connecting with people in his community. And, you know, as they work and learn from one another, then they'll be able to help each other more. So.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what they're saying, I mean, visibility is so important. There's, you know, no shortage of people who are in the world who have great ideas and they, you know, and they want to enact these ideas and maybe just whether it's because they don't have the time or don't believe in it enough or whatever, when they see somebody like us doing these things that they want to do. Oh, I would love to go to Children's Hospital and teach art to kids, or oh, I would love to be at a film festival and engage with other filmmakers. You know, when they see that out there, when they know it's there, they're going to come to you and they're going to give you their best self. That's definitely been my experience as far as like the volunteers that we have accumulated. It's just a lot of people who are just really interested in seeing something that you know they wished was there and now they have access to. And you know, whether they're providing their time, a lot of them are just skilled people in many other meaningful ways who can come in. So this past film festival, which was March 13th through 26th, I had a large group of volunteers, and one of them showed up one day and we ran out of sign-in sheets. So she went and drove to UNO where she worked. She came back with like a bunch of sign-in sheets, and they had like images she had pulled from the website, and there was a QR code. I don't even know how to do a QR code, but she put a QR code on there. And it was just, you know, it was a level of organization that she was used to, that she was able to offer to the film festival just like on the spot, that I didn't even see coming. But you know, it was because it was there. It was because she knew about it, and because she was like, oh, now I can put my best self into this without me having to worry about fundraising or board meetings or, you know, whatever the other things that maybe kept her from pursuing something like this.
That's great. There's so much that when you're passionate about what you're doing, people will be willing to share that with you. Since we're getting closer to the end, I have one more question, but I want to let everyone know that we are going to take a couple questions if you have any. So if you have a question that you want to put in the chat, you can think about that and do that. But before we get to that point, I'll start with you, Claire. You know, what's that piece that you wish you would have known before you started on this as a project? What would you like to know now?
I think it kind of goes to what we just talked about, is that, you know, you should, I wish I would have known that the more that I shared my story and open to people about this, you know, great program that we have and the work that we do. You know, I think sometimes in life we try to separate, like, this is my job, this is what I do, or, you know, maybe someone's a dentist, but they're a musician as well, and that's like a whole nother part of their life. I think making yourself vulnerable, like I said earlier, and just kind of sharing, hey, you know, you may not know me, but I also do, you know, this program. I'm very involved with Children's Hospital. You know, the people that I wish I would have known earlier, like, I shouldn't be so timid to say, this is what I do and this is what I'm really passionate about. And like, I'm going to be straight with you. It's good to be proud of yourself. It's good to say, I'm really proud of the work that we've done. Or Gian said, like, I'm really proud of this past festival, or I am going to reach that 100,000 or 6-figure amount. Like, you have to have faith in yourself. And part of that is sharing your story and just reaching out to people that you may have not have thought about. You know, when people come into my gallery, I always tell them that Bethany asked me this. She said, are you an artist? And I'm very artistic. I'm very creative. I won a coloring contest in the 2nd grade, like a national coloring contest. It's still one of the proudest moments of my life, really. And so when people come in here and they ask me about me and my life story, I make Amy's art cart part of my life story, because it is a big part of my life. And, you know, I think if you would have asked me this 7 years ago or 6 years ago, I might have been a little bit more shy to talk about the program or the work that we do, just because, you know, I don't know how the person would react, or they might say, well, I came in here to, you know, for another purpose. I'm not interested in your story. More people are interested in your story than you think.
Agree completely with that. Definitely what I was going to say too, leans into that a lot, which is that I wish 5 years ago and 4 years ago and 3 years ago and 2 years ago that I had completely disregarded all of the imposter syndrome that comes with the vulnerability, putting yourself out there. You know, just there were so many times leading up to the festival where the only thing that was holding me back from moving forward with scheduling or moving forward with like saying yes to a band that was really expensive. The thing that held me back was me saying, am I ready to do this kind of programming, or am I sure, or what am I not thinking of that's going to go wrong? And then every single time, you know, I was reinforced like, no, you're ahead of this. No, you are the expert in the room. Embrace that. And then, you know, finally, when I was able to really just like settle into that, like, yeah, you're the only person who's doing the Black Film Festival of New Orleans for a reason. Like, just own it. And, you know, as soon as like I was able to just I mean, it kind of happens every year at some point. Sometimes it's during the festival. This year was probably a little bit more ahead of the festival. But, you know, if 5 years ago, I would have been able to trust myself more and say, no, you got all the bases covered. This is exactly what you think it is. And, you know, attack it that way. If I would have been able to do that every step of the way leading up to each festival, you know, I'd be well beyond where I am now. But I mean, I'm also thankful for that growth and that learning curve and being able to, you know, really truly feel comfortable. Like, no, there's not a boogeyman that's going to pop up on the first day of the festival. And it's like, why didn't I think about the boogeyman? Like, it's not going to happen. It does feel really good to be able to, you know, speak proudly about it and to own it and say, yeah, I got this under control. I'm going to do this thing that I do, and I'm going to do it well.
I think I might add one thing that I just kind of thought about. This kind of what we were talking about earlier, but I would say also, don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. I mean, you know, as I mentioned, Children's Hospital has grown by 20,000 square feet since I started Amy's Art Cart. So the amount of art supplies I order that have to be checked in, make sure we got everything we asked for, or if someone donated something and we need to make sure it passes our safety testing, or, you know, have someone else like a nursing unit look over it, just make sure it's safe. You know, the more I get into this, the more I am definitely leaning on people to say, hey, I need help. If you are at the hospital today, if the order comes in, could you check it in and just make sure everything we ordered, or, you know, just if that donation drive came in, could you just like check those certain units and maybe have a child life specialist look over it. So as I get older or spend more time on Amy's Art Cart, I am learning I do need help. And I know me now, no, it's okay to ask for help when you need it.
Thank you for sharing all of those thoughts. It's clear that you've both built really strong organizations, you know, by going through this whole process and learning what you need to lean into, and that you do need to ask for help. But there are so many resources out there. And so I think that's a good reminder to everyone that to use the resources that you have available, and that there's a number of resources available even in the chat today of things that you can look for with Artists Thrive and with the Ella Project. Real quick, if you each want to tell where people can learn more about your organizations, just in case they want to go back and see all of the great work that you've done over these years. Let's go ahead and share that real quick.
Sure. So Amy's Art Cart, we are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, and then we are on Children's Hospital's website as well. Under, you know, the donation section, they have lists of all these kind of funds and projects you can get involved with. So I can put in the chat too.
Thank you. See the film festival website there in the chat.
Yep, that's my film festival site. Here's my Instagram. We've got some lovely pictures and some information. Yeah, and my contact information is littered all over my website, and I'm very, very easily accessible. I always answer my phone, even if I don't recognize the number. So you could just call me or email me directly and ask me.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. Jean, I'll throw it back to you. Thank you to the Ella Project and to Artists Thrive and Tremaine Foundation for making this possible today. And I hope that it was valuable to everyone. And oops, I see that there is one question if we want to jump back to it real quick. What are some umbrella organizations for nonprofits that help in the way Children's Hospital helped? And now that it's a great question. I think that's where we might need to be, think creatively about that based on what type of work you're trying to do, and think about where there's a good fit in the community. Is there something you wanted to add to that?
I think honestly, one umbrella way you can think of is just start volunteering with certain organizations that you are passionate about in the community, and see, where you're fit, or maybe something that the organization is lacking, or something that they could shine more light on. I think that's a great way to start. There's so many great nonprofits and organizations in New Orleans, and you never know where participating in one might give you an idea about, the other. For me, like with Children's Hospital, when I was in the 8th grade, I would go participate in cooking for families at the Ronald McDonald House on a Friday. I did it a number of times, and that very early experience made me realize, like, there is a certain personality type and type of person, like, that you have to be comfortable volunteering with terminally ill patients, or just kids that have been through terrible accidents. And there is part of that is a personality type. The same way I think it's a great idea for physicians, maybe even before they get into medical school, to like really actually volunteer and spend time at a hospital, because maybe they are not comfortable in a medical, like face-to-face with patients. Maybe they would be better in a lab or like a clinical setting, but you wouldn't know that unless you spent time volunteering and getting familiar with whatever you're passionate about. So if you're interested in filmmaking, then you should volunteer with Gian. If you want to be a lawyer and do intellectual property and copyright, Ashley probably needs an intern. So, just anything that you think, wow, just the same. When you're young and you're deciding what you want to do with your life, a lot of people intern to see, okay, is this the right fit for me? I think it's the same way, to just kind of look for these organizations and say, you know what, that's a pretty cool thing that they do. Like, maybe I'm going to explore this. And I think, everybody needs a mentor, right? You just, to have someone that has done it before is very helpful. So lean upon the expertise of others.
Yeah, think about the networks that are out there. Start putting it out there, and you'll learn a lot very quickly. Okay, well, Jean, thank you.
Thank you, guys. This was really great. This is exactly what we were hoping for when we got you all together, and I really appreciate y'all going into details and using Claire's terms to be a little vulnerable. I thought that was really a great service to our audience and to our community. Thank you all for continuing to do the excellent work that you do. Thank you, Bethany, for leading us through this lovely discussion, and of course to Heather for supporting this and really coming up with the idea. Until then, we hope to see you guys back on June the 1st for our international touring, and we're going to sign off for now. So everyone have a lovely day. Thanks again, and take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.